What is going on, everybody? I am back today to talk about a new release horror movie from the Blumhouse company. Blumhouse is one of those production companies that is very hit or miss for me. They either put out something really quality that surprises me that I end up really enjoying, or they make absolute garbage cash grab films that are PG-13, typically made for a younger audience that don't necessarily have the greatest screenplays. Movies like Truth or Dare, there's a ton of them in Blumhouse's catalog that I could go through that are just low tier grade horror movies that don't really do much of anything. And this was a movie that, upon initial reactions and seeing some reviews on Letterboxd, I was seeing some 4.5 stars. Really excited to watch this movie, and it was released directly on streaming, which is unfortunate whenever a new well-received horror movie doesn't get theatrical time. But regardless, I wanted to check this movie out anyway, and the film I'm going to be discussing today is Totally Killer. Totally Killer is directed by Nahnatchka Khan. 35 years after the shocking murders of 3 teens, an infamous killer returns on Halloween night to claim a 4th victim. When 17-year-old Jamie comes face to face with the masked maniac, she accidentally time travels back to 1987. Forced to navigate the unfamiliar culture, Jamie teams up with her teenage mother to take down the psycho once and for all. So, I had no expectations for this movie when I went into the film. Shortly after found out that this is from the same director as the romantic comedy film Always Be My Maybe, which I absolutely despised. I thought that it was terrible. I thought the humor in it was absolutely abysmal, and it just didn't work for me in any way, shape, or form. There was no chemistry. It was poorly shot. And so now when I talk about this movie after I've seen it, this is one of the worst movies I've watched the entire year, without a doubt. It was one of the most painful, horribly paced, terribly executed movies that I've seen the entire year. The chemistry between the actors is awful. The humor does not land whatsoever. There is no suspense. There is no tension. The actual scenes of horror where there's like stabbings that occur, the stabbing doesn't even line up with the person's body correctly to where it looks realistic in any way, shape, or form. And I'll pick it apart a little bit more when I talk about the film in total. So our movie stars Kiernan Shipka as Jamie. She lives at home with her parents, Pam and Blake. And what we learned very early on is the town that they live in had a string of murders in the 1980s when her parents were in high school. And 3 girls at the high school were murdered. They were all stabbed 16 times. And the killer was deemed the Sweet 16 killer. And no one has ever been able to find out who this killer is. And Pam, the mother, is really overprotective. She makes sure Jamie knows how to protect herself, that she's properly armed, all of these things in case it were ever to happen again. So of course, per horror movie logic, it happens again, and her mother ends up getting murdered in the first 15 minutes of the movie. And her and her father are completely distraught, and there's a science fair going on at the school. And one of her friends at the school is doing a science fair project, and she is actually creating a time machine. The killer shows up when the two of them are looking at the time machine. Kiernan Shipka's character gets in it. The killer stabs the time machine, causes the time machine to go off, and she is teleported back to 1987 before the series of murders occurs. And so she's there with her best friend's mom, her own mom, all of the victims, and she has to try to stop these murders from occurring and get back to her own time period. So, as I said at the beginning of this, I thought this was absolutely horrible. Honestly, like, there are certain films. I'm about to turn 33. I've been watching movies for a very long time, specifically horror films. I've watched thousands of movies in my lifetime. This to me is like lowest common denominator, the most cheap, unoriginal concept that you can imagine, executed in the sloppiest, laziest way imaginable. And it's really disheartening when you see a film like this get a lot of positive reviews, because you start to wonder, is this just what people are accepting now? Like, is this just what people are okay with? Is like the weakest, most bland horror content that can exist. Because first off, this is just a rehash of a lot of movies that are way more entertaining than this. Obviously, the number one comparison you can make is Back to the Future. There's even the jokes laden throughout of her thinking her dad is hot. And like all of the beats that you see in Back to the Future exist in this movie. Another film that comes to mind recently, also from the Blumhouse production company, is Happy Death Day, which I really enjoyed. I thought Happy Death Day was really entertaining, didn't take itself too seriously, but the humor and the horror mixed together really well to create a very fun and enjoyable experience. Another film that a lot of people have been comparing this to, which is a movie I reviewed a while back, which is the film The Final Girls from 2015, where a young girl gets transported into a movie that her mother acted in the 1980s. And that is also a really fun, entertaining, charming horror film that is really well written and entertaining. This movie has horrible writing. Number one, when every comedic bit that you have in your film is reliant on attacking some sort of like social construct or the way that our society is shifting. If you've been watching my channel for a while, you know I am a very liberally minded person. I'm very progressive. I'm all for social change. When every joke in your film is something about some sort of societal construct and just saying, wow, wasn't that bad? Wow, that's not cool. It gets very grating after a while. It's fine to do it once, but to me, if you're going to make a movie that is attacking important political and social issues, make a movie about that. Putting those jokes in this movie is not going to do anything to change anyone's mind about the political and social landscape. There's a joke about the mascot in this. There's a joke about the security at the school system. There's a joke about jokes that they're telling about kids in the school. It just goes on, and it's like trying to be wink and a nod at the screen, which you can tell those kind of jokes, but make them clever when you're essentially just spewing information to the audience and then just regurgitating it again and again as like a, wow, my audience must be dumb. Most of the people who are watching Blumhouse horror movies probably aren't conservatives. I'm going to be completely honest. And I don't think if a conservative saw that in a movie that's really going to change their perspective whatsoever as to how they think critically about social issues. And to me, if that's the whole crux of all of the humor in your movie, it's just not funny. Also, every scary moment in this is like a reference to another film. There's so many scenes in this movie that just feel copy and paste from Carpenter's Halloween, just in the structure and the way that they're shot, and there's no creativity in the shot selection. It honestly, the cinematography to me felt like a freshman or sophomore in college. It was so shaky. The way that they placed the camera in specific scenes was mind-boggling. There was this one like editing choice that they tried to make when she first got out of the time machine that was this weird like warped lens that looked like some cheap free Adobe Premiere After Effect that you can throw into a movie. It was nauseating to watch. And the other issue I have with this is the pacing is so bad. So many of the conversations in this don't add anything to the overall narrative, because the core of this film is this young woman going back in time after her mother dies, meeting her mother, realizing her mother is not the person that she thought she was, but still trying to prevent her from getting killed. So the entire crux of the movie should be hinged on the relationship between the mother and the daughter. It's not well written. Neither of the characters are interesting enough to really grab a hold onto and make you stay invested. None of the challenges that they face, nothing about these characters really makes the story worthwhile in any way, shape, or form. The best part of this film is Kiernan Shipka's performance, who is really acting her heart out in a movie that does not warrant it whatsoever. She is giving it her all in every scene, and she feels so wasted in her performance because nothing else surrounding this movie is interesting. I hated the mask. It was so stupid and cheap looking. The third act twist in this is like the most, you could guess it in the first like 40 minutes of the movie. It's an hour and 40 minutes long, and it is the most simple, dumb reveal imaginable. There's no shock value to it. And just the entire time I'm watching the movie, I'm trying to think to myself, What about this is unique or interesting or engaging in any way that it will resonate with me later if I think about it? And none of it did. I just wanted it to be over. From the 40-minute mark on, I was just like, could this get any more painful? And it just got worse and worse and worse. And I'm really curious because, like, most of the reviews that I read that are really positive said, like, oh, it's an easy watch. Well, yeah, anything's an easy watch if you put it on in the background and don't pay any attention to it. But if you focus on any element, whether that be the actual writing in the film, the production design, the horror elements, which are terrible. Like I said, the stabbing in this looks bad. There's no real, like, gore or anything to make it entertaining to watch. None of the horror sequences are suspenseful in any way, shape, or form. They just kind of happen and you cut back to more mundane dialogue that doesn't really build the characters up anymore either. And it's just, I'm really curious to the people who loved this movie, what do you love about it? Because there's nothing really charming about the movie. It's not like it's anything we haven't seen before. It's not providing anything new to the horror genre, and it just left me really irritated. There's nothing to me as a person who watches hundreds and hundreds of movies a year to watch a film that feels like I legitimately wasted my time. And this was a movie I felt like I legitimately wasted my time. And that is the worst thing that I can say about a film. It's definitely one of the worst things I've watched all year. I would not recommend this to anyone, and I'm really baffled as to how it's getting the type of reviews that it's getting. So if you've seen Totally Killer, did you love it? Did you hate it? Leave me a comment down below and let me know what you thought. I thought this movie was abysmal. There's not really anything positive I can say about it whatsoever other than Kiernan Shipka's performance. As always, if you can like the video and subscribe to the channel, it helps me out a lot and lets me know the type of content you're looking for. I'm always putting out new material and look forward to getting more out for you in the near future. And as always, everyone, thank you so much for watching and have a great rest of your day.